There's a good chance you've seen a GIF or few like this floating around the internet, or maybe like this or this, and you might have thought, wow, that seems really complicated. These are all games published and made by Zachtronics Games, and once you play them, you realize that yes, they are very complicated. Yet, you strangely get into a sort of flow while playing them. But to understand all of that, I think we should look at the studio's history so far and my thoughts and research on why they're so compelling. What truly makes these games special is their focus on problem solving instead of puzzle solving. You might not fully understand what that means, so let me touch on it a little bit more. Let's start by defining puzzles. Google defines them as a game, toy, or problem designed to test ingenuity or knowledge. Now, one thing about puzzles is that they typically only have one or two solutions, because that's the thing with puzzles. If they had too many solutions, they'd just become incredibly easy and boring. Take for example the game Scribblenauts, a game where you can write any word and spawn that word in as an item. It just becomes boring and stale eventually, because 90% of the puzzles can be solved just by writing the word jetpack. This is where Zachtronics games differ from puzzles. All Zachtronic games have just a few elements, but each one has a deep system and or interaction with all the other systems. I think Mark Brown from GMTK put it best when he said,
"When you play Portal, you're trying to discover the solution to the puzzle, whereas in Infinifactory, you are literally inventing a solution." And the use of the and a in that sentence is important because typical puzzle games have just one answer. Maybe there's a couple alternative solutions, or you could tweak the main answer slightly, or there is a solution that the developer never intended. But in Infinifactory, the possible solutions are infinite.
I've been playing a lot of Zachtronics games throughout the past few years, and I think the one that shows what I just mentioned the best would be Opus Magnum. In this game, you have to use alchemy to make different stuff like gold or potions, and to do this, you use little arms that you can program to move atoms on the screen. And the really interesting thing is that they're not programmed with code, but with simple instructions such as grab, turn right, rotate what it's holding to the right, extend, and other things such as that. There are also things such as an atom bonder, a conveyor belt that you can program to move across, atom fuser, and again, even more. So with all these systems that are complex and work with each other, you're given a simple task and you have to figure out how you want to do it, not how the game wants you to do it. Thusly, it being a problem, not a puzzle. But you might think, well, there's so many systems, doesn't it fall into the category of just being boring because it has too many solutions? Well, there are actually three things that counteract that. One is the fact that the problems are still very difficult even with all of these systems, so no matter what, you're still gonna have an engaging time. The second is that the game puts limitations on you. The most common in all of these games being that you can't put stuff on top of other stuff, so you have to use your space effectively. Now for the third, which is what truly makes these games fascinating, is at the end of each level in a Zachtronics game, you'll see histogram graphs showing you where your solution is compared to others in certain criteria. Typically, how much space the solution takes, how many resources it needs, and how quickly it can do the required task. Optimization is the big thing that makes these games stand out, be replayable, and for it not to have a million different solutions that are all just as boring as the last. Without these criteria, you wouldn't know what to do if you wanted to make your solution better. It'd just be a case of, if it works, it works. It really does what I call scratch the engineering itch that a lot of us have. The simple urge to optimize the ever-living crap out of something that you made. This could be code, device you made, or in this case, a machine that uses salt water mixed with lead that's been turned into iron to make a stamina potion. So, the history of Zachtronics. In the year 2000, one Mr. Zach Barth founded the company Zachtronics Games. The studio at that time was dedicated to making whatever Barth felt like making, as their later renowned Zach-like formula hadn't been established yet. Barth continued to be lead designer all the way up until their final game in 2022. Zachtronics was a self-published, aka indie studio up until 2016, where the company was sold to a publisher, Alliance Media Holdings, because Zach Barth didn't want to deal with the business side of game development. In 2019, the studio released a book named Zach-like, which goes in more detail about the history of the subgenre, and you can get an online version of it for free if you're interested. I've decided to play a few Zachtronics games up to their third chapter, those games being Opus Magnum, as mentioned earlier, Space Chem, Infinifactory, and Exapunks. I wanted to touch on their latest and last game, Last Call BBS, but I felt it was too different to be really relevant to this video essay. I also think that this is a good spot to mention that I did receive Exapunks and Infinifactory for free, although this video essay is not in any way sponsored by Zachtronics, and they they did not have a say in its final contents. Now for me personally, these games really scratch that itch that only one other game has ever really been able to that's not in this subgenre, and that game is Factorio. Factorio as well is a problem-solving game. The only difference being that in Factorio, it's not a level with a predetermined goal. It's you having to progress and tackle goals you want at your pace, which is a really good thing and can be more fun. My only problem with it is that the later game of Factorio just becomes, oh, I have this amount of X, but I need 2X for Y, so I'll just duplicate my setup for X, and then that's the end of that. While with Zachtronics games, the puzzles are a bit more, so to say, bite-sized in nature, so the late game problems feel more satisfying to complete because it was harder than the last one. You didn't just do something old again, but with iron this time, although Factorio is still an amazing game. Let's discuss one of the games I mentioned a little bit ago in some more detail, Infinifactory. It's a game where you build a factory out of blocks you can place down and destroy with your mouse, all while you float around. And you might be now thinking to yourself, hey, isn't this just a clone of Minecraft creative mode? And every time someone says that, Zach Barth actually loses a strand of hair, like an angel losing its wings. The thing is, back in April of 2009, he made this little game called Infiniminer, which gained some success. But then in early May of the same year, some unknown developer made a clone of the game, which later then he decided to name Minecraft. So in fact, Infinifactory is not a clone of Minecraft, it's actually kind of the other way around. The indirect impact that Zach Barth has had on the gaming industry because of inspiring Minecraft is more immense than I'm sure that he could have ever imagined. And it's honestly such a shame that he's not recognized for this massive achievement more than he is. Of course, these games, Minecraft and Infinifactory, have vastly different gameplay styles from one another, but at the same time, neither of them could have existed without Infiniminer and Barth's incredible ability to look to the future of development. I think Zachtronics' Twitter bio puts it best when they say, in pursuit of clandestine R&D objective, Zachtronics accidentally releases a game from time to time. Zach Barth truly does just make systems. It's just that these systems can make for amazing problems for players to solve. The whole studio is amazing, and apparently Zach is back to making games at a new studio called Coincidence, which I think is a fantastic name for a studio from the man who makes games just by coincidence. Now at the end of all this, allow me to tie it all together. Firstly, a problem-solving game is distinct from a puzzle-solving game by having to invent a solution, not discover the solution. Second, this genre gives a feeling of satisfaction that is unique to problem-solving games, which is very rare to find in games these days. And last but not least is that— oh goddammit, my factory malfunctioned again! Hey, before you go, I'd just like to say that MistTree is funded by Patreon and hopefully AdSense soon. So if you could check out the subscribe button below and my Patreon, I'll give you some garlic bread. See ya, nerds!